first. And then we'll jump around a little bit at some of the stuff that was out there that I found really resonated with me. So the highest grossing films of 1986. Number one is a little movie called Top Gun. Timely, given that there's a sequel coming out. I will tell you, if you're an audiophile, and all the guys who are audiophiles, this was a huge thing to prove your home sound system. Remember my stepdad, my uncle, my dad. Oh, listen to those ships. Listen to those fighters. Listen to those planes. Listen to those jets. I'm going to tell you right now, Top Gun is not in my top 10, 20, 30, 40, 100. I'm going to tell you right now, that movie is a romance. It is a romance. It is actually a chick flick. I got to pull your guy card. You can tell me there's fighters all you want. No, this is the movie if you lost that loving feeling. Ridiculous. Oh, I need you. Let's go for rides on my motorcycle. It's another Tom Cruise romance. Oh, so it has a little bit of tragedy and action thrown in. Don't try to kid me. That is a romance. I don't like it. Not that I don't like romantic movies, but come on. Top Gun is objectively awful. If it wasn't for the jets, it wouldn't even be cool. And I love Val Kilmer. Number two is Crocodile Dundee, Paul Hogan. Crocodile D1 and Linda Kozlovsky, right? Oh, I saw that movie theater. It was great. Platoon, Oliver Stone. I think that was a starting point for a bunch of folks, right? I think Johnny Depp was in that. Corey Glover from Living Colour, lead singer of Living Colour, was in Platoon. Karate Kid Part 2. So Ralph Macchio is on this list twice because he was a box office draw at this point. After the first Karate Kid, he was definitely a star. So he's here at number 4 with Karate Kid Part 2, which I really enjoyed. They make the trip to Okinawa. I like it. That whole thing with the drums and the rhythm and all that. I thought it was pretty cool. My kids say it is a weak entry in the Karate Kid series. And honestly, I haven't watched Cobra Kai yet. I've heard it's very, very good. But the other movie that he has, it's not in this top 10, but he's also in Crossroads, the guitar movie, where he battles Steve Vai, of course. At the Crossroads, he's the devil's guitar player. Very, very interesting to think of Ralph Macchio as this huge star. I mean, obviously, Outsiders, Karate Kid. Karate Kid is a franchise. And then he kind of went dormant for a few years and then had that brief resurgence with My Cousin Vinny. Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. Another snoozer. God, the early Star Trek movies I found were really boring, except for Khan. Back to School at Rodney Dangerfield. Yeah, that's okay. Aliens, the sequel. That's Cameron, right? I think so. Yeah, James Cameron. Really, it set Sigourney Weaver into a whole other stratosphere as far as an action hero, which at the time, there were no female action heroes, with the exception of Sigourney Weaver, really. Eddie Murphy, The Golden Child, Ruthless People. And then rounding out the top 10, one of my all-time least favorite, It's Garbage. I don't care if you say that I get my Gen X card pulled. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I do not like you, Matthew Broderick. Bye-bye. Okay, so what else is in 1986? Let's see. An American Tail. Remember that? I think the soundtrack, is that James Ingram and Linda Ronstadt? I think so. Such a good song. Movie's okay. Fievel. Very sweet. Let's see. Behind Enemy Lines. Not the one that you're thinking of. This one with David Carradine. Big Trouble in Little China. Kurt Russell, Kim Cattrall, Victor Wong. John Carpenter is just amazing, and that's such a cool movie. I mean, it's got camp, but some genuine fright, some cool action sequences. I mean, Kurt Russell is just the man. And I've realized that there's almost nothing that Kurt Russell does that I don't like. You give him John Carpenter, I mean, it's perfect. They keep talking about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson being attached to a remake. Now, with all the modern special effects and all that, I can conceive of it being pretty cool, but that's a tough one to beat. And anything that's been remade from John Carpenter, and this is not a diss to, Rob Zombie, who I think is a good horror director, but I mean, it's really hard to do remakes of John Carpenter movies. I mean, even when he's tried to do sequels to things, so, Escape from New York, they did Escape from LA. Escape from LA was so campy, but I enjoyed it. You have Blue Velvet by David Lynch. The people who are into David Lynch really love David Lynch. I mean, I'm not a huge David Lynch fan. I didn't get into Twin Peaks like some of my friends did, but, I love Kyle MacLachlan, so that's all good. Captain EO. Okay, so this didn't even ring a bell to me that Francis Ford Coppola directed Captain EO. And my wife hadn't even heard of it. I'm like, well, it was at Disney theme parks only, and it was like 3D, I think. I think the only reason I saw it was I won a trip. Well, not won a trip. I guess it was when, so I was in a group called DECA when I was in high school. It's a club, a marketing club. I saw Captain EO when we went on a trip there. Other than that, I wouldn't have seen it. Cobra. Sylvester Stallone and Brigitte Nielsen. Was it Adrian Cobretti? I think that's his name. Is it Adrian? No, Marion Cobretti. So he did Marion, because I think that's, is John Wayne Marion? Anyway, I saw that in the movie theater. It was rated R, but I don't think it mattered what with my mom or my dad. He had that cool laser sight on his gun. Yeah, it was a freaking cool movie. The Color of Money. That's a movie that I like in hindsight, because I didn't really, I think, appreciate it at the time. Saw it at the movie theater, and it didn't really resonate with me that it was a sequel, to The Gambler. Is it The Gambler? The Hustler? I did a bunch of research before this episode, and then I got so distracted by all the hubbub. The Hustler, that it got me completely off my game a little bit. Anyway, so yeah, The Hustler, and this was directed by Martin Scorsese, and Paul Newman won an Oscar for this. I don't think I remembered that, but yeah, I didn't appreciate it as much until much later, and I realized that it's really quite an amazing movie. So I mentioned Crossroads. You have Delta Force with Chuck Norris and Lee Marvin. Down and Out in Beverly Hills. That is a dark comedy. Nick Nolte and Richard Dreyfuss, Bette Midler. Down by Law. Okay, so Down by Law is a Jim Jarmusch movie. And that's Tom Waits, John Lurie, Roberto Benigni, and Ellen Barkin. A buddy of mine showed that to me many years later. And I think once you see a Jim Jarmusch film, you're like, wow, this guy is quite amazing. And I think I've seen everything that he's done since then. Oh gosh, what was the one? Pale. Oh. My brain tonight is absolutely fried. I can't remember any of this stuff. Because Johnny Depp was in a movie with Jim Jarmusch movie that was really good. Dead Man. Yeah, Dead Man. Oh, Ghost Dog with Forrest Whitaker. Oh, that is a freaking really, really great movie. I really like that. He's a urban samurai. So freaking good. What a weird, wonderful mind on Jim Jarmusch. Let's see here. Ferris Bueller, I mentioned that. Firewalker, also with Chuck Norris. Oh, and Lou Gossett Jr., who's on here again later on with Iron Eagle. I think people forget Lou Gossett Jr. was a major star at that time. The Fly, David Cronenberg, Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis. What a freaking dark movie. I saw that, not at this time. I saw it a few years later, and genuinely creepy because, Cronenberg does all the body horror, right? The body transformations. And it's deeply disturbing. And it makes you think of the nature of man and DNA. Oh, what a creep fest. And you don't think of Jeff Goldblum that way. He's not, now he's happy uncle, Jeff Goldblum and, doing some of these over the top absurd roles that he does and, commercials and whatnot. But, that is a really, really frightening film. Well done. I mentioned The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy. So what's weird is I didn't realize this. So you have the GoBots, right? GoBots at the same time as Transformers the movie. Now, I think in episode one or two, I mentioned Transformers the movie because Optimus Prime died in that. Like, it was really heavy. Imagine being a kid. You're super psyched because everyone has Transformers or GoBots. We were poor. I had GoBots a lot. I did have some Transformers. Anyway, you go to this movie and it's super serious. Like, it's more like anime than like TV Transformers. Like, it's dark. And Optimus Prime dying is not what you expect when you're going to the movie theater as a kid. He's Optimus freaking Prime. The Great Mouse Detective. So I mentioned, Fievel, and An American Tail. So my wife was like, oh my gosh, An American Tail and Great Mouse Detective came out in 1986. So she's younger. She would have been 9 at that time. So this was right in her wheelhouse. And her family was pretty strict about content anyway. So it makes sense that those are really big deals for her. One of my favorite themes here on the show is I talk about musical Highlander. But here you have the original Highlander, Christopher Lambert and Sean Connery, and Clancy Brown. You want to talk about the Kurgan. I mean, this guy is awesome, chewing up scenery, but genuinely frightening. But that was a really cool movie. And just kind of gave you a different view of Sean Connery, too. Because for me, as a kid, he was just, James Bond. And I didn't really see a lot. Well, you know what? He was in Time Bandits, too. So my view of Sean Connery is that 80s Connery, which is very, very different. And he did that one turn. It was a different production company that did its own one-off Bond. But that was like my Sean Connery. And of course, Papa Jones in The Last Crusade. But Highlander, I think is almost underrated. And the concept and the series and the TV show, it's really cool. I really enjoy that series. Now here's a movie that my wife, my kids, everybody just loves. And it doesn't resonate with me. I don't know. Hoosiers. Some of you right now are going, what do you mean? Hoosiers is amazing. Now look, I am in the Boston area. There is no bigger Hoosier than Larry Bird, right? I considered going to school in Indiana. My wife and I looked at the campus, because we were engaged at the time. We were trying to figure out, are we staying in Massachusetts or are we going to move? So she's from the Midwest, so maybe it makes sense to move out there. And I was going back to school. So we looked at it, go out that way. Yeah, we never did that. Howard the Duck. Oh, good grief. Leah Thompson, I'm so sorry. Tim Robbins is in that too. Unbelievable. So Iron Eagle, as I mentioned, with Lou Gossett Jr. and Jason Gedrick. So, planes, jets, fighter jets, kind of a big deal in 1986. Not just Top Gun. I don't think there's any romance in Iron Eagle. Well, not that I remember. Jumpin' Jack Flash with Whoopi Goldberg. Like I said, The Karate Kid Part 2. Labyrinth with David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly. Directed by Jim Henson. That's a movie that either you kind of love it or hate it. Because if you saw it when you were a kid, it was probably terrifying. So you either really identified with it or you found it terrifying. Kind of like Neverending Story. Never ending story, like nightmare